Okay, welcome into the live desk. My name is Janae Hancock. Thank you so much for joining us for another Casey Development segment. We do this every Tuesday at around 10:30, so we're running just a few minutes behind. But as you know, we have a lot of things going on here in the KCTV5 newsroom. With that being said, I do want to jump straight back into that video that you see here on your screen. Kansas House lawmakers, they're actually moving forward with a bill that would use star bonds to give teams incentive to go to Kansas. Now, this does come on the heels of Chiefs owner Clark Hunt admitting on Saturday that the team is exploring the option of moving out of Arrowhead, which would mean building a new stadium. So, with all of that being said, I do want to turn things over to our guest for today. You're taking a look at Thomas Friestad, who is with the Kansas City Business Journal. Thomas, thank you so much for joining me here at the live desk once again for our KC Development. Let's jump straight into it. What exactly is a star bond? I think a lot of our viewers and a lot of people in the community, we are stuck on that word right there, that phrase right there, and we don't have a definition.
Yeah, you often see STAR bond itself in the headlines. Believe it or not, STAR is actually an acronym for sales tax and revenue bonds. It's a pretty distinct incentive tool that Kansas has at its disposal, geared toward municipalities looking to attract kind of destination or entertainment type uses, stuff that's going to bring a lot of new tourism to the state. So functionally, you will have usually municipalities will draw a STAR bond district around some set area where the project will go. From within that area, you have kind of a cocktail of local, state, and usually hotel taxes, transient guest taxes that are redirected back to bonds that are issued up front to help pay for construction of the project. So that is what would be contemplated here potentially if this state measure were to move forward today.
And that is how it has been used. But can Kansas lawmakers kind of change how the star bond can be used moving forward with two stadiums, and that is the Kansas City Chiefs and the Kansas City Royals?
Yes. So yesterday, legislative measure and consideration in a Kansas State committee effectively would tweak a handful of little provisions within the Star Bond law to make it more enticing for Major League Baseball, NFL, and potentially other teams it could be used for. So for example, under the Star Bond law as is, the bonds are able to cover up to 50% of project costs, of full project costs. Here they are lifting that ceiling to, so to speak, so that you could potentially fund up to the entirety of a stadium project with bonds. Will that happen? I have questions around that, but at least the intent of the law is that that is what would happen. You also have the ability um, for local municipalities to not have their own sales taxes redirected. It could just be states having the sales taxes redirected if that's something the municipalities were not on board with. And another piece is usually the star bonds are intended to be paid off over a 20-year period. This would allow for a bond maturity up to 30 years, longer time to pay down that debt.
And I do want to dive further into the payments and how that all kind of works and how it has worked. But first, I want to do a little comparison here. The 3/8 cent sales tax, can we compare the two with the Star Bond? How do they differ?
Well, it's interesting in that I don't know that this is a direct comparison to what was on the table for voters in Missouri, and that the Chiefs, unlike the Royals downtown stadium, they were not seeking bond issuances. They were not looking for any new debt to be issued in creation with a stadium project. They were proposing an $800 million renovation, $300 million of which the Hunt family said they were going to put into it, and $500 million of which were going to come from sources that we still don't know about, but including the state potentially. And the sales tax itself was going to flow into the team's stadium repair, maintenance, management, and operations fund, RMMO, for basically filling the purpose that it has been filling so far. The teams use that to help offset eligible repairs at the stadium. We're talking in Kansas right now, just construction of a stadium. I don't know to what degree the Chiefs see that fund as maybe like a pivotal part of a new project, or if they would seek some additional public source to create that, in addition to what different people will estimate is, a new stadium could cost $2 billion, it could cost $3 billion. We don't know that. I don't know that that's been determined. So there are different pieces that are really germane to this conversation here.
Yeah, and I think there are still a lot of questions, as you know. So, moving on to that next question is just kind of clarification that if this is approved, there would not be a tax increase for residents. Is that correct? As far as the STAR bond is concerned.
Not a tax increase, but these are future tax revenues. And part of one of my big questions when I heard this was on the table, it doesn't surprise me that some version of this would go on the table after a fails sales tax vote in Missouri. But we're talking about potentially billions, at least in the abstract, billions of dollars of bonds that would be have to be offset from somewhere. So where is the sales tax and hotel tax revenue coming from? And part of this is we don't know where any new stadium in Kansas would be built for the Chiefs or the Royals. I mean, primarily the Chiefs, I would think, but there's conversation of would it go around the Legends, the Village West area. They have kind of an existing tourism district that has actually been one of the more successful uses of star bonds, to the extent that kind of tourism projects in that area, Children's Mercy Park among them, have used those in the past. They've been paid off way ahead of schedule. We're just talking magnitude difference here. It was $150 million of star bonds issued to build Sporting Kansas City's home. Are we talking $3 billion for a Chiefs stadium? That would dwarf most, if not all, of what's come before. So part of me wonders whether we're talking the entirety of a hypothetical stadium in Kansas gets funded with these bonds, or if it's just that 100% possibility is being floated out there as a way to really encourage municipalities to say, you know what, go hog wild, propose what you will propose. And Representative Sean Tarwater said as much. He intends this to open a bidding process for different municipalities, on top of the bidding process that people say Missouri and Kansas already would be engaged in for the future of these facilities.
Yeah, and I do want to go to an exact quote from him, taking a look at this video once again for our viewers who are just now joining us. But Kansas lawmakers, they are saying that they want to make sure that they are in a position to do a scoop and score since Jackson County dropped the ball surrounding the sales tax vote failing. Now, Thomas, is it that easy to scoop and score both teams? I think that's where we really kind of bring you in.
Well, I think these teams will speak for themselves as to what they most want out of their futures. I mean, Clark Hunt has been pretty emphatic about it, that this Arrowhead Stadium there's a deeply personal connection there. That was his father's stadium. And, one could reasonably ask whether one failed sales tax vote where they're joined at the hip to the Royals is the trigger for them to look elsewhere and to entirely give up on Jackson County. The Royals, have suggested that maybe they want to work more closely with Kansas City now as opposed to Jackson County. Chiefs have said no such thing. In fact, County Executive Frank White has even said, he would be willing to consider a Chiefs only ballot initiative in coming months, as soon as coming months. So, are the Chiefs willing to walk away from that after one setback here? The campaign mailers may say one thing, but we'll see what the team executives are saying behind closed doors.
Right. And speaking of the team executives, going back to owner Clark Hunt, he actually also said that he hasn't been in communication as far as with Frank White, and he hasn't been in communication with Kansas, I should say. Let's go back to that, the Kansas lawmakers. Now, going back to Frank White, Jackson County executive Frank White, he said yesterday that he is waiting on the right time to speak with them to discuss an agreement. Do you think that ultimately that can benefit the Kansas side? I know that they are expected to make a vote later on today or later on this week.
I wonder whoever moves first, if there's an advantage in that. I do think certainly the specter of having these star bonds out there in Kansas is quite useful for the Chiefs in potential pursuit of public financing from the state of Missouri. And if it is indeed their intent to stay at Arrowhead Stadium, renovate Arrowhead Stadium, I would certainly be out there at press conferences talking about my options as well,
Definitely, definitely. And this is a story that we will continue to follow here in the KCTV5 newsroom. Thomas, I want to thank you so much for joining me here at the live desk for this week's Kansas City development. And we'll be sure to see you next Tuesday, unless there is major breaking news later on this week that we'll definitely have to call you in for. So thank you so much for joining me.
100%. We'll look forward to keep following it. See ya.
Of course. Have a good one. And for our viewers, we'll actually be joined by KCTV5 investigative reporter Angie Racono here in a bit at around 11:30. We'll be talking about her investigative story that she's been working on for some time now regarding the Indian Creek Trail killing. So be sure to join us right back here on the live desk at around 11:30.